Hello everyone, Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest lose 3-0 to Arsenal in Ange Postecoglou's first game in charge. How much did we learn? How much did he change? And who does he need to change? We'll discuss all that and a little bit more in the company of, first of all, Mikey Clarke. Got to say morning, afternoon, just about. How are you doing?
Afternoon, Matt. Yep, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. I've got a bit of a sniffle, but it's that time of year, so I can't complain. Michael Temple. He logged on with one of his hairs out of place, people, just to let you know what's going on in his world. How are you, Temps?
A little bit windswept, Matt. Apart from that, I can't complain.
Good. Kelvin Wilson, good to have you back, Kelv. It's been ages. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's good to be back. Not one of my ears were out of place, Temps, I'll tell you that.
It was such an easy intro for me there, and I didn't take it. So.
Different barbers, Kelv. Different barbers.
Yeah,
Exactly. All right. Well, I normally ask one person to kick us off. So there's Mikey, who was there, might have a different view to Temps. I don't know. Mikey, kick us off on what you made of Saturday.
Unfortunately, it was exactly what I thought would happen. We don't have a very good record at Arsenal, do we? I think the last time we beat them, talking about, was it back end of the 80s? My expectations going there were quite low, especially because of the turmoil that I said. And I use turmoil because it does feel a little bit like that. That's been happening over recent weeks. So I was hoping to be pleasantly surprised, but unfortunately, it kind of went the way I thought it would. I'm very high on Arsenal, as I said on the preview on Thursday. I think they'll win the league. I saw enough on Saturday to show me that they're going to beat pretty much every single team down there. They were very, very good. And then when you put Saka back into that team as well, it's quite frightening. So I wasn't too gutted at the result. I kind of expected it. I was a little disappointed at the performance. It felt a little bit muddled to me. I'm sure we can get into it a little bit, but I walked out that ground thinking it's kind of what I expected. Try not to be a little bit too down, but it is 2-3-0 defeats in a row. And we need to turn it around, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in isolation as a game, I thought we played pretty poorly. I don't blame the manager for it, as we discussed on the post-match show. I'll get in. We'll talk about Morato and stuff like that, but in general, I was disappointed in our performance. It was better than West Ham, Temps, I suppose. What did you make of it?
Look, for me, there's some players out of form, and they are the same players that were the reason we had such a good run last season. So I'm going to back them to turn it around. But Morgan Gibbs-White can't turn out too many performances like that. Milenkovic hasn't had his most convincing week, be it for Forest or Serbia, but he now found himself in a back four that was 50% changed from the one that served us so well last season. So that there are reasons for it, but there's some improvement needs to come from within, from personal performances, from personal standards, beyond what's happening in the dugout with Nuno and Ange. So the first thing that I want to see is that players who've been models of consistency for large portions of last season, arresting this blip, which we've seen across the West Ham and Arsenal games. You're right to point out that Arsenal are a very, very different proposition to West Ham, who I think are a very poor side and will find themselves in the scrap towards the bottom end of the Premier League, whereas Arsenal might win it. Not interested. We've got to take control of our own performances, and those players that we relied on for so long and have been beacons of consistency need to arrest this slump, because it's a brutal league. Weaknesses are pounced on, and you can't turn in back-to-back performances like that as an individual and expect anything other than back-to-back defeats.
We'll get on to Morgan Gibbs-White because he's probably a big topic of conversation. We'll do a whole section on him. And there's a few other players who I fully agree with, Temps, are out of form, key men. Just going back to the manager, Kelv, and he had two training sessions, one with half the squad, one with all the squad after international break. From your experience, a new manager comes in. How long does it take for them to make changes successfully? I think they can make changes unsuccessfully very quickly, like Sells, Martin, Amorim at clubs that we're seeing elsewhere. But to come in and have a plan that works, how long would you expect that to take with Postecoglou?
I think it depends on the way he's going to want to play, and the players that he's got, can they adapt to the way he wants to play? Unfortunately, he's missed the transfer window. They've got him in a crazy time. I know that with what Nuno said and what's gone on, but he's got to work with the players he's got now. And I keep hearing people saying he's stubborn and he don't change his ways, which he hasn't at Spurs. He didn't at Spurs, did he? But I think he would have learnt his lesson that, coming into Forest, he'll look at the players, he'll work with them this week and see the imprint that he can put on the team. in a positive way. Can they press? Can they play the eye line like he likes to do? No, not with the back four they've got. Not at the minute, anyway. But it all depends on the way he wants to play. To be honest with you, I just think that with the players he's got, with what Temps has said, to have players out of form and so many of them, and they were your best players last season. So it's just bad timing. It's bad timing and injuries as well. It doesn't help. But when a new manager comes in, it usually is a lift sometimes. This time it's a little bit different because Nuno, it looked like he got on with all the players. Had a great season last season. Start of this season, it's been okay, mediocre, I guess, not brilliant. So it's not like players probably wanted him out the door. That's usually the case when managers leave. You know, a lot of players are thinking, oh yeah, we need a change. But in this case, I think that a lot of the players were surprised and probably gutted as well. You know, they're probably gutted that he's gone because they enjoy playing for him. They've had a lot of success with him. So yeah, they'll be gutted he's gone. But it's not kids football, it's men's football. So they're getting paid to do a job. So they've got to adapt to a new manager. You know, he comes across a good guy, Ange. So hopefully, you know, the players will buy into him. He always seems to stick up for his players. So I think the players will buy into it. But I think the most important thing is the ways he wants to play. I think that's going to be a big thing with how he takes his team forward.
So this is what I'm going to ask you, Cal. I'm asking this so it tees up the Gibbs-White discussion, I think, and other senior players. When a new manager comes in, especially as you say, Nuno is well liked, popular. Is Ange in a difficult position politically, as much as anything, with the dressing room, to come in and say, Morgan Gibbs-White, you've had 2 crap games in a row, I'm going to leave you out? However he frames it, I guess. Is that something that would be an issue for him, do you think, before we start discussing whether he should discuss Morgan or not?
Yeah, he can't do that. He won't do it. Not that he can't do it. Obviously, he can do it, but he won't go and do that. He can't, go and he's just got the job. It's 1 game in, 3 or 4 training sessions now. I don't think he'll drop Morgan Gibbs-White as captain. That will be a bit ruthless, and he won't want to lose the dressing room. He's only just got in there, so he wants them on side. He'll do his own work. He'll know how good Morgan Gibbs-White is and has been. He'll just have to, the man management side in him will have to just come out just to put an arm around Morgan or whatever he feels right to try and get his form back. And it's the same with a few players. It's not just Morgan. I know he's probably our best player on his day, and without him creating something, we don't really have many chances. But I think it was a crazy couple of weeks with what Nuno came out and said and what was going on, and players being away on international duty and reading, is he going, is he staying, and then Nuno when it is. I know players, you get paid to go and play football, but it's all the stuff off the field as well that you're looking at and thinking about your own career. Will this manager like me? Will I be playing? Will he want me out? So it'll be a number of things, but I think this week will be a good week for them to work with him, and he'll probably have meetings and make them feel at ease, and that's always nice from a manager.
So with Morgan then, Mikey, to try and frame the conversation a bit, I guess I think he's had 2 awful games in a row. Well, certainly 1 awful game. Arsenal's a really tough opponent. He wasn't very good on Saturday, but certainly 1 awful game and 1 bad game. And people will have mixed reviews of his performance at Palace, I guess, as well. The whole situation that people are also saying is he doesn't want to be here, etc., etc. Equally on the flip side, he's had a new baby. There's a lot going on with Morgan, I think. Where are you at on him and his place in the team?
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Last season when Elanga was struggling, I think at the start of the season, and we had this debate about whether to pull him out the team or to stick by him, and we stuck by him, and he became our most potent weapon.
Well, he did come out for one game.
He did, and maybe that's the case, but I think I go back to Kelvin's point. I don't know what message that sends. I think it's very, very risky at this point in Ange's tenure to pull what essentially is our captain. I think flip your mindset a little bit, because where I'm at is we've almost got the perfect game coming up on Wednesday, because it's League Cup. I expect to see 10 or 11 different faces in that starting lineup, and that is the opportunity for, say, a James McAtee to show what it's about, and then you have a different conversation. So let's say he makes 10 or 11 changes. James McAtee as an absolute stormer, then it's like it's not just about removing Gibbs-White or a Sangare or whoever or changing the back four. You then flip the conversation to say, look how well these players have done come in. They're knocking on the door. So it's not just a case of you remove somebody from the team because he's had a couple of poor performances. You also replace them with somebody who's really deserves to be in it. So if I was a Forest player now, I'd be thinking it's up for grabs. Everywhere's up for grabs here. New manager, Kel, that's all right, isn't it? Like it's, the slate's wiped clean for them all. Some of them aren't performing at this point in time. But I'd be seeing that as just a great opportunity to stamp my mark on it. And I think Wednesday will tell us a lot. Will tell us an awful lot. So I don't think it's panic stations just yet. I don't think you start pulling people out or drastically changing the team. But I do think, on the other hand, this is a great... If I'm James McAtee, I am buzzing because I'm in that team on Wednesday and I'm ready to show everybody what I'm all about.
Yeah. I mean, I think my position on Morgan is, a week ago we were saying which players are going to flourish under Ange Postecoglou, and we all said Morgan Gibbs-White and Elliot Anderson. So I think it is throwing the baby out of the bathwater to drop him. But if someone puts their hands up on Wednesday, like a McAtee or a Douglas Luiz, it gives Postecoglou a big headache and probably a welcome one because, as Temp says, some players are way out of form. Why do you weigh in, Temps? I'll look how many bad games Elanga had before he was rested. But what's your thoughts on Morgan? And then we'll probably talk about a few other players, I guess.
Never been more interested to see how a B team get on in a early round of a cup. It's never taken on more meaning with a manager with a fresh pair of eyes who's going to want to give the same message to all players. I'm disregarding what's gone. I'm here, clean slate, show me what you've got. There'll be players, as Calvin will know, there'll be players that love the opportunity, players that will feel that with Nuno in charge, they could have dined out on some past glories. So it is an opportunity for James McAtee, Douglas Luiz, and I dare say one or two others to stick their hand up. There's a few holes in this side, challenges in putting 11 together now with key personnel either out through injury or lacking form. They're going to relish this opportunity on Wednesday. So I do expect this game to have an influence on the side we see in subsequent weeks in the Premier League, in the Europa League. There's players that are chomping at the bit. Douglas Luiz probably being at the top of that list, who hasn't seen a minute of football for Forest at this point in time and has now seen a new manager walk through the door who's going to offer him a chance to show what he can do. I'm not going to bag Morgan Gibbs-White. He's going to go on to be a key player this season. He's having a wobble. He'll arrest it and come back into form. He's a player that tries things. And when you do that in the final third against Premier League opposition, it doesn't always come off. But we owe it to him to play him back into form, to get a tune out of him and let him be what he was last season, which is a team in which he was the centrepiece, the man that everything was built around, the first name on the team sheet. Because from what I've seen in the last 2-3 weeks, Elliot Anderson has struck his claim for this to be his team and for our playmaking to come from a little bit deeper and to have a very different type of creative role and for him to be the first name on the team sheet, the first name that's talked about in transfers, in terms of transfers to the big six. So, yeah, let's see what teams put out against Swansea. Let's hope that players do apply pressure to these guys that think they should be in our best 11 because that competition will drive us forwards. But make no mistake, this is a blip from Morgan. He'll be back.
Just before I ask Kelv about that, Elanga, it was 15 games into the season, I think, before he was left out. Ipswich at home. I'm sure Jota Silva started that game and won a penalty. So we're 4 games in. So it feels different to me, certainly. On Morgan, Kelv as well. I know he wanted to go to Spurs, but he signed a new contract and he's fighting for a World Cup place as much as anything. So there's that motivation there, surely. Where are you at on Morgan's game, his form, and what you've seen from him so far?
Yeah, he's obviously out of form at the minute. Like you say, at the minute, it's probably 2 or 3 games in. He hasn't hit the heights that he finished last season on. So, there will be more to come from. He's a great player. You can see that attitude, even when things aren't going right. He's still going to go in for attack. He's still going to run around for you. It's just the quality that he brings that we haven't seen yet. I honestly don't think there's going to. I think there'll be changes obviously Wednesday, but I think a lot of the players will play. It's Ange wants to see the way he can play. No disrespect to Swansea, but this is a great chance for him to. I know he's going to probably only have 2-3 days to have a little training session with them, but he's going to try and put his footprint on it to say, right, this is how I want to play. This is a perfect game for him to go and go and tell his players how he wants to play and to go and try it. You know, Swansea, like I say, I'm not being disrespectful, but they're not a Premier League side. So the way he wants to play, this is going to be a great chance for him. I think Morgan, you know, he's for me as an expert, I think he has to play. I would want to play. I'd want him to play if I was there, if I was involved in the club, seeing what he's done. I'm sure Ange would have had meetings with him on one-on-one, with him being the captain, him and Yates, obviously. You know, he'd have had a good conversation with him. Same with Morgan. He would have spoke to maybe Maddison and people like this at Tottenham and asked what he's like as a manager and that. And, you know, I'm sure Maddison used to speak highly of him, so I'm sure he's like, you'll love him and things like this. He didn't want to leave. He's just signed a new contract, you know. He might have wanted to go at the start, but once he'd been offered what he's been offered, he signed it. He knows he's there for the long run now. He's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So I do think a lot of the players will be gutted about Nuno. I think that's what will be the case. You know, I think he got on with a lot of them. But like I said before, you know, it's not kids' football. You're there, you're getting paid to do a job and go and do it. I just think it's like a player, you're going in out of form. And at this moment in time, Morgan's just a little bit out of form. But like Temp said, I'll echo that. He'll be back, you know. I think fans should stick by him, you know, with what he's done over the last couple of seasons for Forest. Morgan, you know, I wouldn't say he's carried the team, but he's been our main player. So, you know, I have no doubts, you know, he'll be back to his old self sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm not averse to leaving any player out. I just think it's not enough games for me. I'd like to see him play a few more. Yeah, I think so. Right, just before we move on, quick word for the Trent Nav Betis game coming up next Wednesday, which feels mad, a European game. You can watch it on the big screen. You can watch the Swansea game as well. That's on Sky, so you can watch that on the big screen indoors and outdoors as well. So loads of televised games to enjoy at the Trent Nav if you're not lucky enough to have a ticket. And thanks as ever for their support. Just on Swansea quickly, Mikey, because this will play into players who are out of form, I guess. I imagine you'd probably want to play at the consistent defence, but maybe the wingers like Bakwa look bright. Hudson-Odoi looks like he might. Another player who's a little bit out of form, though he did score against Palace. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. Kev's got me thinking when he said that it might be an opportunity for him to get his points across, and therefore you want a consistent lineup. Never really considered that. I think you might be right. You might see a bit of a mix and match then. I think there are some people that deserve a chance. I think their substitute appearances on Saturday impressed me, some of them, and I think they'll be in the team. So I'm talking about people like Callum Wendo and Bakwa. I think they'll both start. Callum might start. I think you're right. I think with the defence as well, you're probably not going to want to risk Murillo. You probably want to rest Milenkovic. So you might see a Willy Bolly or a Jai Cunha or somebody like that. But I think the more I think about it, you might get a bit of a mix and match. I was expecting 10 or 11 changes, but come to think of it, maybe not. But I think you will get those people in there that have been chomping at the bit at Douglas Luiz. I think McAtee, Bakwa, I think they'll all start. But they'll all have a role to play because I think he'll do all his subs and it might get to penalties. So you just don't know. But this is just a great opportunity and it could be what we need because over the last 2 weeks, we've lost 6-0. So we need a bit of injection of something, a bit of positivity, a bit of, connection. I mean, I don't know how much we want to talk about the Arsenal game, Matt, but I wasn't too enamoured with the team selection at the start and I was more enamoured how we finished the game. So I'd like to see a few changes, if I'm honest, but I think you might get a bit of mix and match here.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Arsenal game, Temps, the Morato substitution selection, I was really scathing about in our WhatsApp group. I just didn't think it made any sense at all. But if he doesn't think Savona's fit to start, what else could he do is maybe the argument. And if that's the case, isn't that a bit worrying? I suppose the Aina's injury is unfortunate. The Zinchenko situation is unfortunate, but it wasn't a great situation for him to be in on Saturday if those were the options he had, in a sense.
Morato on an island against Madueke was doomed to fail. And if you didn't see that before, you saw it when he got on an island with him the first couple of times and just ghosted past him like he wasn't there. I don't think he either managed to be touch tight, to deny him possession or to jockey effectively. He looked like a fish out of water. And Savona wasn't much better when he came on, right? That's a problem we've relied for a long time on having automatic selections in Nico Williams and Ola Aina. And in the absence of Zinchenko at the weekend, we were totally exposed at left back. And Arsenal played on that. They exploited Morato. They saw a weakness and they totally exposed it. He's more comfortable at centre half. That's his position. And there's not too many players. I've seen Kelv play right back in centre half, but it's a very different skill set. And there's not too many players that have the attributes to be able to do both. And Morato certainly didn't. It was uncomfortable to watch. There's an obvious weakness in the side. And a team like Arsenal and a player like Madueke just lit up when they saw the opportunity to blitz us.
Yeah, Danny Ching makes a good point in the comment here. Nico Williams was done almost as much as by Madueke, but Calv, surely it was predictable what was going to happen. You as a centre half, and I'll ask you about playing right back. That's a nightmare scenario, isn't it? And we must have known what was going to happen.
Yeah, listen, it's a square pegging around mass big time. I think.
You're still allowed to say that around Forest podcasts. Challenge is in a billy.
I think to play centre half and then to go to fullback, it's completely. People say, yeah, it's just still you're still defending. You're not. You are defending, obviously, but it's completely different. I mean, you've got to be more mobile to play fullback areas. You're doing a lot. You're playing against quick players usually in the wingers. Centre half, you're pretty much playing in a tram line. Really, you just everything's in front of you. You move to the side, obviously, and stuff like that. I just think with fullback, you're up and down. Yeah, for a one-off game, he's probably just told, just defend, don't do overlaps, just stay as a back four, and he did. But like I say, if you're playing against a tricky winger, with speed, and you're a centre half, and your main game's your strength, physical strength, not running strength, you're going to struggle all day long. And I thought that straight away. I thought whoever Arsenal play, on that side is going to, rip them apart, and it did. And yeah, Nico didn't have the best of games as well, But again, that's going back to what Temp said. There's a few players out of form, and I think Nico as well, for the standards he's set, I think he's not been at the races like he has been over the last couple of seasons.
Let's talk about. We might as well talk about the goals then. Probably weirdly start with the second goal because Savona was at the heart of it. I don't know, Cal, what did you make of it? It wasn't good on his part at all, but is it too harsh to be too critical of a young player making his debut?
Yeah, obviously it is. It's not nice for when a young player's making his debut to criticise him, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it is what it is. I think you're on about the second goal, right, Matt?
Second goal, we're pinged in behind him, where he plays him onside, miles behind everyone else.
Yeah, I think when you've got a player, a midfielder, it was the fullback actually, wasn't it, who from Arsenal come with the ball and pinged it over. When they got that much time on the ball, as a back four, you can't be that high. I know managers. I remember playing under managers. They're constantly Neil Lennon, squeeze, get up, and you can't. If there's no pressure on the ball, you cannot squeeze up because one ball will do you. One ball over the top will do you. So you can't squeeze. So every time the player's travelling with the ball without anyone engaging him, as a back four, you've got to drop. So you're basically just moving with the player on the ball. So you're getting deeper and deeper. But Forest didn't. The fullback at the time, he kind of dropped a little bit, but he didn't judge it right. It's gone over the top and he's gotten in behind. So as much as it was his fault, I think as a back four, especially, if you're an experienced centre half and you can see there's no pressure on that ball, I'm screaming to my back four, drop, and I'm dropping with him. We all drop as a unit, and they didn't do that. So as much as it looks like it's his fault, I think the experienced players in that back four, should take a little bit of the blame and put their arm around the young lad and just say, yeah, we should have dropped. It was too wide. There was no pressure on the ball.
Mikey, what did you make of Savona overall?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with any of that. I think he struggled, didn't he? Let's be honest. But you think about what other options Ange has. I think I probably would have started him just because he's played fullback, hasn't he, a lot in Serie A, rather than stick a Morato out there. But we're always destined to struggle. I think rather than pinpoint certain people, and I will say this because I said this on Saturday, and I don't think anybody apart from one or two people agreed with me. I didn't like the way we started each half. And what I mean by that is obviously we're letting a goal in the second half because we're so high, as Kelv says. We started the first half like it as well, and I panicked a little bit. So we squeeze. If anybody's got this on record, just watch it and tell me I'm wrong. We squeezed up to just outside the centre circle of our halfway line. And the reason I know that is because Ange was in line with him, telling him to do it. So we were high up the pitch right at the start, pressing. What happened during the game is they're so good, they just forced us back. So we couldn't keep doing it. But if that's the way he wants to play, bearing in mind we started like that, and bearing in mind that we're letting a goal after 60 seconds in the second half, that's the thing that scared me. I'm all for aggressive front foot football, but do we have the players to do that? And are, a lot of them are out of form. It just scares me a little bit. And Arsenal away, surely if there's one team you just want to sit back a little bit, just for a minute, it's them. So it made me nervous those first 5 minutes. Some teams will do it and we'll blow them away. If we did it at Burnley, for example, we might set the tone and it might work. I just think we just need to be a little bit flexible. But I didn't like the way we started each half. I wasn't too disappointed with the overall result. And you can't necessarily blame the people that have been there 5 minutes. But that's the one thing that scares me. So when I'm on here next, whether it's after Swansea or whether it's after Burnley or whatever, just look for how we start halves of football and whether it's maintained. Because like I said, I think we would have maintained it if we would have been playing a weaker opposition. As it happens, they're just too good. It was like watching a boxing match. You just get jabbed. You just get jabbed for 3 or 4 rounds and eventually you succumb. And it's corner after corner and we just got pushed back. But it just makes me a little bit nervous, Matt. I don't know whether everybody else agrees in the comments or listening, but yeah, I'm not sure we're built to do that. But I guess if that's the way Ange wants to play, I best get used to it.
I think with the squeezing, with this, that he likes to play an eye line and he likes to squeeze. I'm all for that. It's front foot football, but it's not just the back four that you need to concentrate on. Ange know this. I'm not trying to tell him how to go. I'm just trying to give the people an insight in how it works. As a back four, you can only squeeze if your midfield are squeezing onto their midfield, your wingers are on their fullbacks, and your centre forwards occupying the 2 centre halves. Because, like I said earlier on, if there's no pressure on the ball, it's impossible to squeeze because anyone can break that line. Any half and everyone in the Premier League that you're going to play against are good players. So one ball will kill you, which we've seen. So it can't be when you squeeze. It's not just the back four that you need to squeeze. You need to work with your front press, and then that will follow. Your back four will follow up with that. So, it's great when it works. I watched Ange when he was in charge of Celtic, and Celtic were absolutely unbelievable. I watched them in Champions League quite a bit, and there was the energy from them. I was knackered just watching the game. I was thinking I couldn't play this team. So if you get it right, it is brilliant. But if you don't, that's what happens. That second goal. You can't squeeze if the players in front of you aren't putting pressure on the ball.
Kel, can I just ask you a quick question? How long do you think it? Sorry, Matt. How long do you think it will take the team and the squad to understand that and to get that drilled as almost like a innate, natural thing? Are we talking days, weeks, months?
I think they need training. You need to do it on the training ground. You need to get. You do it in phases. You don't just go out and say, right, we're just going to squeeze. I want you to press there, press there. You need to let the players understand. Bearing in mind, you've got to remember that these players have played under a manager that soak up the pressure. And we've done that for the last 2 seasons. And it's counter-attack football. Ange is completely different. Watching him at Celtic and watching Tottenham, their front foot, they're 100 miles an hour at it. So it depends on the player as well, Mikey. Players need to adapt to it and buy into it. And if they don't buy into it, I'm sure Ange will drop them. But, if they don't buy into it, if they don't win games, if that's how he wants to play, and that's what he needs to understand. If they can't do it, or if they're not going to do it, he's going to have to adapt. He can't be stubborn with it, because it's not for every team. It's not for every team. You can't go to every ground and play one way. You can't do that. Like, Forest couldn't go to Arsenal on Saturday and say, right, we're going to press. You can't do that at Arsenal. You couldn't do it at Man City. You've got to pick and choose when you press. It's not press 20 the old game. You've got to sit in, soak it up, and press at times. And I think that's just the understanding what the players need to have when to press, when to sit back, and that'll just come from training. Triggers where Ange will say, right, at this stage when the ball's in this area, we press. When there's no pressure on it there, we drop. So it'll just come from training, whether they get time to train, because they've got a lot of games coming up, especially with Europe starting. So it'll be hard for him to get on the training ground and get his point across.
I've got a graphic for the high line, for how high it was or wasn't in 1 second. We'll talk about the first goal. James says, I never put any contrasting comments up, so I'll put his comments up. We should drop Morgan Gibbs-White. We can't carry him anymore, hoping for a bit of skill. We sold the wrong player, referring to Elanga. We should start backward, Callum Wenzo, Amari Hutchinson, Anderson, Louise, McAtee in the middle. I don't think we're carrying Morgan Gibbs-White. I think he's had 2 bad gagames. I think that this is really, James, I think this is a really knee-jerk comment. If you don't, so that's sometimes I don't put things up because I don't want to tear them apart. People who's saying we should start Amari Hutchinson. Half the fans are saying he's a bag of shit a couple of games ago, and now we want him in the team. If we sold the wrong player, Anthony Elanga, Newcastle fans hate Anthony Elanga. This is my position. We're so knee-jerk about players, how we view players, this pendulum from brilliant, rubbish, brilliant, rubbish. We play 4 games and people are going nuts about these players. So that's my position on some of these players. Callum Wendo looks good. Yeah, backward, looks good. But Chris Wood scored 20 goals last season. I'm not saying we should drop him straight away. I think we need to be more considered. Does anyone else want to comment on that or not?
Oh, look, if you want something to agree with, I think Baku had a very encouraging debut. I think we'll talk about that a little bit. Looked very bright and encouraging every time he got the ball. But if you dropped every player when they fell out of form, there'd be no one left in your squad within a month.
Exactly, Temps. That's nail on the head. Football doesn't work like that. Players are out of form. With players, if you're out of form, and the only way to get back in form is to keep playing. If you drop a player that's had 1 or 2 bad games, where do you think that's going to take him? The players are human beings as well with emotions and feelings. So you can't just drop a player because he's had a few bad games. I think the comment about we're carrying Morgan Gibbs-White, I think that's probably one of the funniest comments I've heard in football in a long time. Carrying Morgan Gibbs-White with what he's done for Forest, his performances and he's not carried the team, not at all, because the players last season were unbelievable. But what Morgan Gibbs-White has brought to Forest, I think, has been something that I haven't seen for a long time from a player, the skill and the attributes that he's got. Yeah.
I think it's important to be patient with players, certainly, especially now. I mean, let's just throw it back to you, Tams, and then I'll go to Mikey in a minute. How much change do we need? How rapidly? A new manager's a lot of change. Should we be making a lot of personnel changes as well when we're going to make tactical changes? Is that a factor?
Ange has to assess the players and assess their role in his team. If we take Milenkovic as an example, as one of the outstanding centre-halves in the Premier League last season, broadly speaking, does particularly well in the games in front of him. As Kelv describes, he can drop back. He's not weak to the ball in behind, reads the game very well, and players take a cue from him. If he automatically needs to defend on the halfway line until the ball is played, he's going to be a little bit undone as he was in the England game, where he ends up whacking Harry Kane. So Ange needs to assess the suitability of his system, the suitability of his players, and enact from there. And I think it's massively oversimplistic to say, easy for me to say, that Ange is going to come in and impose his Spurs style on Forest when the makeup of the squad is entirely different. He needs to get his ideas across in the context of the players that he's got. Our players need to bring their A game, be themselves, but also react to the tactical and the formation changes that Ange is going to work to impose. You can't do too much too quickly. He's parachuted in a particularly difficult time, but we do have some games coming up now, the Swansea game being a perfect example, where the stakes are that bit lower. You would anticipate that our depth and our talent is such that we can try things in a manner that you wouldn't against Arsenal at the Emirates. So change is coming. And my plea to Ange would be, yes, impose your style. That's why you're here for. We haven't brought you in to be Nuno 2.0 and to copy and paste every tactic that's been set for the last 18 months. But just be situationally aware and consider the strengths and weaknesses and the experiences of the players that we've got. And I think Milenkovic is a good case in point there to what Mikey observed at the weekend.
I'll just put this graphic up that I mentioned just so people can see how high our line was or wasn't. Mark found this. all it is on the screen are the numbers of the games we played: 1, 2, 3, 4. How high our line was or wasn't. Number 4 is the Arsenal game, obviously. So it was the second highest line. We actually played a higher line against West Ham. Not to very good effect at all, but it's not a massively different defensive line. I think obviously Kel's right about pressing and when we press and all that stuff, I'm sure, but just wanted to put that up. On the first goal then, Kelv, could we do anything better there? I think it was Chris Wood who headed it out. It might have been Milenkovic. Was that a bad header out, or is that being too overly critical? What did you think?
No, I think that's you can pick at any goal, can't you? Yeah, could he head it to the side, more out to the side, not down the centre, but then it's come out to the 18-yard box, so you think, have you got someone on the edge of the box that can close him down? Sometimes you can pick at any goal, like I've just said, but I think sometimes you've just got to say, great strike, good goal. For me, I don't know if I'm being a bit critical here. I don't know if the keeper could save it. I thought, can he? It might have took a little deflection. I don't know.
Deflection, I think, didn't it? Little one, yeah.
His way as well. But that's the only thing. Get out quicker as well. Some of the lads, once Chris Wood's at it, then you need to be on the front foot to go look to where that ball's going to land and react to it. So yeah, the header, can he head it a bit more wide, not centrally? And secondly, I think once Chris Wood's at it, the ball's in the air for not a long time, but it's enough time for you to react and go, and even if you're not going to get to the player, if that player is watching that ball drop and he sees a player charging at him, it's going to put him off in some kind of way. It does. You've got one eye on the player and one eye on the ball. But I think if the second phase, the second ball, we've got to react quicker. Whether it's getting a block in or just, like I say, putting him off and you don't get a clean strike.
Let's do the third goal as well while we're here then, Kelv. A clipped ball to the back post, Trossard, Zubimendi got up. Does Nico have to do better there to prevent such a free header, or do you give the credit to Zubimendi for the timing of his run?
No, I think there's nothing worse than a player having a run on you. It's the hardest, from you with a standing jump and a player with a run, he's always going to beat you in the air. I think, it's the tricks of the trade. Nico's got to realise that, and maybe as he's jumping, throw himself into the player, so he's getting body contact and he's knocking him off balance a little bit so he doesn't get a clean header. But I just think that, at the target that, I know Nico's probably the weaker one in the air, so they've aimed the ball, played it on him. I don't know. Again, it was a good header, but like I say, if someone's got to run and jump on you to a standing jump, you pretty much got no chance, especially if they're half decent in the air.
Looking at the game, Mikey, but also looking forwards, midfield's really interesting. It's going to be a big cog in the way Ange plays. We've discussed Morgan at length. Thought Anderson was really good. Did we get any hints and signs on Sangare versus Louise versus McAtee, I guess, or whoever else? Or was it more a case that Arsenal was so good and we'd be jumping to conclusions about any of those players?
Yeah, I think a lot of them struggled. We were on the back foot for the majority of the game. I think when they switch it wide really, really quickly, the pitch felt big. I need to look at the pitch dimensions, but that pitch felt big looking at it from behind the goal. And they were switching it from left to right very, very quickly and isolating our fullbacks and really making the pitch very, very wide. And we found it difficult. So in a midfield 2 or midfield 3, you're really hoping one of those can sprint across and give a bit of assistance. And a few of them struggled. Sangare struggled, if I'm honest. There was a few that struggled. And just before I add something else, Matt, the thing you put up from Mark, that I think, if I'm honest, I think that's a little bit skewed because we got battered that game and we were pushed back after about 10 minutes. I want to see that stat in the first 10 minutes because I'm telling you, would be the highest. And I'll stick to my guns on this.
He's got a real bugbear about this. I thought you could say you want to see after 4 or 5 matches.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, to be honest, it's such a small sample size, right? And you can answer any of these questions, but essentially, we looked brilliant in that first game. Not so good the last 2 games. It will even itself out either way. And I might be completely wrong. And he might not do the whole Spurs thing. And I might be completely wrong. And he might have just wanted us to be positive. And that's great. But I think in general, going back to your question about midfielders, he surely wants them to be as mobile as they can be. Help the defence out, get on the ball. I'm not too sure that the profile that he started with on Saturday is one that you might see at Burnley. What I'm trying to say is I think he'll make changes. I think a few players will get their chance on Wednesday. I'm thinking Douglas Luiz, and I'd be very surprised if that midfield doesn't look a little bit different at Burnley. So I'm not digging out Sangare. I'm not digging out some of the others. Gibbs-White, the fullback struggled. We had one shot on target. Not great. But I do think that you will get changes now, and I think some of these lads will get their opportunity on Wednesday, and I think they'll stay in the team for Saturday. And I do think that midfield will look a lot different in a month's time.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bakwa, certainly a player who might come in. The Emirates is the third biggest pitch in the Premier League. So
there we go.
Oh, now you like a stat, Mikey, do you? When you agree with it, you're happy, are you?
Absolutely, yeah. It's got to fit my narrative. Yeah.
But Mikey, do you want to guess where the City ground ranks in the Premier League pitches?
I bet it's right up there because that's quite big as well, isn't it?
It is a big pitch. Yeah.
First,
the biggest. It's the biggest pitch. It's actually bigger than the Arsenal pitch. Yeah.
Also, yeah, it's a big pitch.
Yeah. How much of a difference does that make, Cal? Before we go back to Thames?
Yeah, it makes a massive. Yeah, makes a big difference. Especially depends on how you want to play as well as a team. But it does make a difference, right? Yeah.
Interesting. Midfield, Temps, longer term, shorter term. I suppose it's a big game for Douglas Luiz on Wednesday. Ange just basically said he's going to play, so it's a chance for him, isn't it?
The one under long-term pressure for me is Sangare. I think Elliot Anderson is absolutely inked in. First name on the team sheet, has overtaken Gibbs-White in that sense. Morgan Gibbs-White on his day will be the most creative force in our team, and he'll find his way back into form, and he'll become an automatic selection in the biggest games once more. However, that third place is up for debate, and we have seen availability from Sangare, which is the first step, right? He's got himself fit and ready to play in these first few games, but hasn't done quite enough for me. Again, shows in flashes what he can do, but there are more dynamic all-round central midfielders, in my view, like Douglas Luiz, for example, who could come into that side, necessitate Elliot Anderson having a slightly different role. But I think he's got everything, hasn't he? Elliot Anderson is a luxury in so many senses, one being that he can adapt the manner in which he plays football to suit those around him and complement their strengths. So I would be intrigued to see a midfield trio of Gibbs-White, Anderson and Douglas Luiz.
Bakwa, Mikey, was taking positives from the game. I think he was probably apart from Anderson, probably the biggest, wasn't he?
Really, yeah, brilliant. I really liked his debut, his cameo. There was one point where he sent two of them shopping, like he just cutting onto his right, cutting onto his left, and left two of them for dead. And I said to the guy next to me, "Blimey, I've not seen that for a while." He looks fresh. He looked up for it. He was sprinting up and down. I thought it was a really pleasing cameo from him, and I'd love to see him start on Wednesday and given that opportunity. Because, like I said, we have struggled the last couple of games. We didn't create anything at the weekend. We created very little against West Ham. We've got a great opportunity now. There are games coming up where you look at them. We've got a great opportunity getting through to the next round of the Cup. We've got Burnley away, two of the promoted sides coming up as well. So there's a good opportunity there. And somebody like Bakwa, you think, can just sniff, he can smell that opportunity, I think, coming. And I'd love to see him be given a chance because I think he's one that I think a lot of people, Pete, a few others on this podcast have been really high on him, getting him in. And what I saw from him on Saturday was really good. I know it was only small flashes, but you're thinking, here's a guy that really wants to make it an opportunity here, really wants to make a difference, show what he's about. And I love that little link up with Callum Wendo he's got as well. So love to see both of them two start. So there was positives. It was a tough day, right? It's Arsenal away. It's going to be hard. We get beat there every time we go there. So I try, and you know what I'm like, I'm an emotional guy. I do react sometimes. But I think this is the time, as Kelv says, get on the training pitch, get some fundamentals in play, give these couple of these lads an opportunity, and let's get some points on the board. Let's get through in the Cup. Let's beat one or two of these teams, and then we're rocking and rolling.
Just quickly before we move on, this is an interesting comment from Sci-Fi Monkey that I was thinking when we go to Burnley, Kelv, and he says here, McAtee could play as a deeper midfielder, and then Morgan plays deeper, McAtee or Igor Jesus play higher behind Chris Wood. Jesus wasn't even in the squad on Saturday. I'm not sure if he was injured or not. I've not heard that. But at a team like Burnley, who probably are going to sit in, not to the degree they did against Liverpool, is that a midfield that could work, or would that worry you a bit?
I don't know if it would worry me. I think I would go with what Temp said earlier. I think I'd play Douglas Luiz. The only thing with Douglas Luiz, I just think he needs to be disciplined. You know, he can't just go running around. You know, I remember watching him at Villa. He's a great player. He's a great player, but it's just the discipline side that you know Singari brings you. You know, he's just going to sit. Singari's going to sit. He's not that mobile. He's not going to go charging around. He's not going to try and bomb forward. But so I think, you know, I'd like to see the midfield. What Tem said. I think, you know, Elliot Anderson and Douglas Luiz.
Oh, we lost Cal. That's all right. He'll come back in a sec. I'll just put this comment up, which I was going to put up from SJ anyway. Yeah, Burnley.
Yeah,
going to need really decent. Go on, Cal. You're back. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think I'd like to see that midfield. I think that would be a great midfield. McAtee. I'm a fan of McAtee, but I just think that, you know, he needs to be bedded in a little bit. I wouldn't just throw him in, especially when things aren't going too well for us at the minute as a team. You know, we're not scoring goals and we're conceding a lot. So it's not like we're doing one and not the other. You know, it's both at the minute. So I think, you know, keep bedding him in a little bit and see where it goes. But the midfield that Temp said, I think, would be that's exciting, I think, on paper.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. And as SJ and a few others have said, sorry, the Burnley, that's not an easy game, and we'll preview that a lot more. I got some flack. Well, we all got flack for saying West Ham, we were too disrespectful of West Ham. I still think they're crap, and I thought they were pretty crap against us. But Burnley, I see as a more of a test in terms of winning the game and how they're set up. Probably all the promoted clubs, to be fair, based on what I've seen from West Ham and Wolves as well so far from what we've seen. Right, we'll talk about a bigger picture of where we're at as a football club in the final 10 minutes or so. Just for that, a word for Global Telemetrics.
Good afternoon. The Bounty Hunter, Global Telemetrics. Here we are, responding to a stolen vehicle. Vehicle stolen from Birmingham Airport whilst this chap's been away on holiday. We've managed to locate the vehicle in a speedy fashion upon being notified. Vehicle's recovered in the West Midlands area. So again, the vehicle stolen from a secure car parking at Birmingham Airport, but then subsequently recovered on a Global Telemetrics tracking device.
The notes for the ad said lots of cars reported recently stolen from airport car parks, which is uplifting as someone who's going to an airport car park next week, but worth getting your vehicle secured via the link in the description with Global Telemetrics. Right. So the last question that I'll ask everyone is where we are as a club, framing it a little bit with some off-field stuff. Ross Wilson looks like, or is heavily rumoured to be going to Newcastle to take a position there. And then I saw this morning reports from Portugal saying that Pedro Ferreira, who's our head of recruitment, he's been targeted by Benfica, who he worked for before, to be their director of football if someone called Narana Lopez wins the presidential election in October. So that could be on the horizon as well. So there's the off-field stuff, Temps. There's also on the field. You could frame it, either narrative, new squad, exciting manager, interesting games to come, lots of reasons for optimism versus, I don't know, we played 3 teams in ideal circumstances in Brentford, Palace, West Ham, not necessarily got the points tally we should have. And as you know, we've conceded 6 goals in 2 games. So you could spin either narrative of it's bad, it's good. Where are you at?
We're trying to integrate a lot of change very quickly. And I think everybody's a bit bruised, to be honest. I'd include the players in that. I'd certainly include the fan base. I think for a long period of time, we were just united behind 11 players and a manager with a very clear sense of direction until that began to unfold back end of last season. And now we find ourselves in unknown territory. New gaffer, debates around players in all positions, a volume of fixtures and a congestion for the rest of this month onwards that we haven't been used to for a considerable amount of time. So we need to find ourselves again. We don't know what our team's identity is going to be. And we shouldn't. A new manager should walk through the door, and he needs time and buy-in to impose his ideas. So, look, it is a bit of an unknown territory. I don't think any of us can predict what's going to happen in the next 5 games, which will include a banana skin cup tie that doesn't really matter, a trip to Betis that certainly does matter, and games against Burnley and Sunderland in the Premier League. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that no one is assured of what kind of team we're looking at this moment in time. The rest of this month will go some way to allowing Ange to bed in, and we'll get to Christmas with a more considered outlook. But there's no sugarcoating the fact that everybody on the field, off the field, casual fan like me, media commentators are feeling a little bit bruised at this moment in time.
Before I ask Mikey, I'll just put some upcoming fixtures up so people can see how the volume of games. Before the next international break, we've obviously got Swansea, Burnley, Betis, Sunderland, Forest, Midtjylland, and Newcastle United. So an interesting batch of games and an intense batch of games, Mikey. Where are you at on where we're at?
Yeah, Temps has just hit the nail on the head. There's just been a lot of... No, I used the word turmoil at the start. It probably wasn't the right word, but it just feels as if we've lost a bit of identity. You know, this middle of last season, we knew who we were. We had a stable squad, we had a stable team, stable manager, atmosphere that was the best in the country. Everybody knew we were going to win games and we were probably going to win them 1-0. That's who we were, that's who we are. Now you've got a team of new players, a new manager, people leaving behind the scenes. We're in a new competition we've not been in for years. It just feels a bit uncertain, and there's nothing worse than uncertainty. So I think in general, if you took the emotion out of it, which is hard for me, as people know, you take a step back and you actually look at where we are as a football club, we're brilliant. We're in a really strong place. We've got a great squad. We've got a manager that won something last year and being positive. You know, everything's all around. You know, we're looking at developing the city grounds. We're in European competition. So it is good. But at this particular moment, because of all the change that's happened, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think I've been laughing at some of the comments today, having a go at me. It's fine. I think we're all just a little bit nervous. But what will happen is we will find our way of working. We will find it on and off the pitch, and things will settle down. And I just think we all have to, including myself, just all have to bear with it a little bit and give a few people a bit of leeway. But I think in general, we're in a really, really strong position. But at the moment, it just feels as if I don't know what I'm going to watch. On a Saturday when I go, I don't know. I don't know what team, I don't know what formation, don't know what I'm going to watch. And I guess that's part of it, right? It's part of why you love it, because it could really surprise you. Otherwise, it might not. But I think once we settle down in those fixtures, I think once we get to the end of that period, which is why I was really keen to ask Kelvin, like how long these things take to embed in terms of playing style. I do think, I don't know, in a month or two, we'll have a really good idea, and then we can debate whether it suits us or not. But at the moment, it just feels I'm just a bit nervous.
Have you got to go, by the way? You've got a dash, haven't you?
I've got 5 or 6 minutes.
I think we'll be done in 5 or 6 minutes. Don't worry. 750 people with us, by the way. Do hit like if you haven't already. I think crossroads is probably the word for me, Kelv. It feels like we could really take off and soar in the next few months, or we could have a really rocky few months based on the kind of uncertainty that we have. How are you feeling about where we're at?
I think the thing that really worries me, I think, you look from when Nuno first came in, and there's a load of off the field things with, getting points deducted and VAR not going our way. And there's so much drama when we're fighting relegation. Last season, there were no noise off the field, and look how we were. It was just concentrating on football. And we finished, 7th and was 3rd in the table for so long. This season now, we've got off the field stuff going on again. And you just think, is too much distraction at a football club. Just, look at Man U. Man U's had it for years, and look where they are, People say players go on the pitch and they perform and, it's got nothing to do. It does. It has a knock-on effect. You're at a football club. They're your employees. You're thinking what's going on, who's going, who's staying, and it's proof in the pudding that it does have an effect on football clubs, on the teams. So I just hope, people leaving, people coming in, it just gets sorted, gets settled, and then everything just concentrates on the football, which it did last season. And look at the positive side of that.
A couple of quick bits from me then before we wrap things up. Renan Lodi is a free agent. People asking, saying we should sign him. I don't think we could register him because the Premier League squad's in. So even if we could sign him, I think that ship sailed. I might be wrong about that, but he couldn't play until January. Well done to Forest women, first win of the season, 1-0 at Ipswich in WSL 2. And well done to Joe Gardner, scored a really good goal for Mansfield Town. It's one of our clutch of really good young players. It's on my Twitter and it's on Mansfield's Twitter if people want to check it out. There's 3 Forest lads there doing good work. Mikey, anything you want to say before we go?
Just firstly, I've really enjoyed this, so thanks to you guys and the chats. I love having all these opinions, whether they agree or not. It's all good to kind of debate because we all have one thing in common, which is we love our football club and we want them to do well. So there's different ways about how we can get to that end goal. Just one thing I want to say, Matt, quickly is certainly at half-time at Arsenal, I spoke to loads of people that watch the podcast, fans of what we're doing. They say that I think the general consensus was, even the ones that don't live in Nottingham, it's good to have the exposure of Forest and to talk about really positive stuff. So even off the back of a defeat, we try and spin it like there's so much good stuff to look forward to at this club. I'm very jealous about everybody that I spoke to that's going to Seville. Really jealous, gutted, wish I could go, but just have a great time, guys. And just remember, 4 years ago we were bottom of the Championship. So, we can moan about high lines all we want, but essentially this club's on the up.
Yes. Good live chat today. Enjoyed it. I know I picked out James's comment, but I do enjoy hearing his views and the opposite views as well, certainly. Temps, anything else from you before we go?
Well, that's the grounding, isn't it? In 9 days' time, 3,000 of us will be in Seville watching Forest play in the Europa League, which I'm very excited about. Have we given any credit to Chris Wood for almost converting one of the worst crosses of the season into a top right-hand corner goal off his chest?
I didn't think he meant it. I didn't think he did. Go on, Kelv, did you think he meant it or not?
He didn't mean it, but he must have some chest for it to bounce off him.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the main point. Yeah, absolute chest of steel. Yeah, amazing. Kelv, anything from you before we go?
No, I think overall, like Mikey said early on, I think the club's in an amazing position, and it's going for a little blip on the pitch. But yeah, I have no concerns. I'm like Tim. I think good will come. Players will get form back. Ange is a great. If you could pick a manager to come in after Nuno, he would be up there on the list of most people. So I'm very confident in things turning around.
Good stuff. Enjoyed this today. Do us a favour, hit like before we go. Do hit subscribe. Consider membership or Patreon. If you remember, you get access to our Discord server, which is going well. Enjoyed that over the weekend. We shall be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll do some Swansea chat in detail, pick some lineups with Pete and Matt Davis-Adams will join me for that. And then we'll have a mini opposition preview as well before the game. Mikey, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure and great to talk to you all. Thank you.
You too. You're going to be late for this meeting. You're a brave man. Temps, thank you very much.
Cheers, Faz. I'm just going to go and avoid wind for the rest of the day. Got to maybe get a slightly stronger wax.
Yeah, you got to protect that hair. Kel, there's another open goal for me there. I'm not going to take it. Kel, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Temps, join my crew, mate. Join my go.
Time to brave the shave. Do you reckon? Fall back some bombing on a little bit.
Yeah. They are for me, definitely as well. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. If we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.